Hello, and welcome to another episode of Backlog Brain Rot. Joining me for this month's top 10 episode are my usual co hosts, Straw Hat
Konnichiwa, Minasan.
and Connor.
Hey yo.
So, this month we decided to do a more open ended top 10 topic, and we are going with our top 10 favorite video game weapons. Since this was Connor's wonderful idea, I will throw it over to him to explain his thought process before we get going.
Yeah. So it's not a very complex thought process. Weapons are cool. Hitting things is fun. It's almost a joke within the games industry just how much almost everything eventually goes back to combat. Like even just finished Bug Snacks last night. What do they add at the very end? A point where you're defending the town.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, probably with spoilers, but eventually everything comes back down to combat. So there have been a lot of weapons over the course of gaming history. And as a big fan of weaponry, swords and guns and all that, eventually I wanted to talk about my 10 favorites. So here we are.
I like this topic because it's very open ended, and just the three of us talking about it before we recorded, it sounds like we each took it like a little bit of a different direction with our lists.
Yeah, I would say I like to think my list is a bit more on the refined, efficient side, a bit classical, but it's probably completely meat-headed.
I just went with a bunch of random things that fond memories. That was a very, very important part of my list. Before we get to it, it's very much a fond memories list.
Yeah, where my list is more like I just kind of like put the weapons all in like different general categories, and then I pick like my favorite weapons from that category. So just to kind of get more representation.
Yeah. As long as my list doesn't sound like a normie IGN post, then I think we'll have succeeded.
We also have a lot of write-ins for this episode, so I'm going to try to make sure I shout out everything that was written into me, but if I forget, I apologize. There's just a lot to dig through.
And you can shout at him in the Discord. Use the nice new voice recording feature.
Oh boy.
Speaking of shouting, I almost put this on the list, but I didn't since it's technically not a weapon, but I almost put the objection yelling in Phoenix Wright as a weapon. Using your words as a weapon, but I'm like, oh, that's a little too cute, so I'll just reference it.
You know what? I was gonna save this towards the end, but you know what? Because of that, I'm just gonna throw in one listener, one write-in. My girlfriend Kristen, I told her about this episode. She does not play video games. I've mentioned it before, and she's like, "Oh, did anybody write in about the dog barking move in Dalmatians Puppies to the Rescue?" I'm like,
"Oh,
you know what? You know what? No one did, but I will mention it just for you." Her barometer for video games is like Fall Guys, Animal Crossing, and 102 Dalmatians Puppy to the Rescue. So you know what?
Fair.
There you go. There's our first weapon shout out. A little puppy barking.
I think that was a speed run in SD or the what is it? Summer Games Done Quick. Yeah, I think I watched that. I think it was 102 Dalmatians.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to tell her that. She always like, "Oh, you guys should play that for your show." I'm like, I'm not sure we're gonna, but there's a chance. There's a chance. Okay, so with that, we will get going on our own personal top 10s, and we will go in our usual order. So Straw Hat, myself, then Connor. So Straw, you can go on with your number 10.
All right, so my first weapon is somewhat cool, yet also I think somewhat stupid, which is why I put it at number 10. So I just put the Keyblades from Kingdom Hearts, and specifically the Oathkeeper, which I like. The final Keyblade just looks absurd if you've ever seen that. But this is also a shout out to Sean because in a way the Keyblades are very cool because they're a key, yet they're also a weapon. But they also are kind of stupid because they're just a giant key that you whack things with.
Yeah, the part that always gets me is the double-sided hilt basket, where it's like you need to open it up on one side, otherwise you're going to break your wrists.
Yeah, this is definitely a very iconic weapon. Believe it or not, we did have some write-ins with this. Ryochi also wrote in with the Keyblade, and believe it or not, Sean wrote in very specifically the Oblivion Keyblade. I'm not sure which one that is, but that's what he wrote in.
That's a good one. I think that's like the really high physical stats one, if I remember right.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a really iconic weapon, and I'm not a big Kingdom Hearts fan, but the combat's pretty fun, so I could definitely see why you would pick this.
It's on my list of classic JRPGs to get to.
Yeah, it's just such a unique weapon because I'm just like, how did Nomura even think about this? Like, let's just use a giant key that can also cast spells and open doors.
Yeah, it's
So
certainly distinct.
A lot of things about that game are distinct, but we don't have to get into that too much right now. So I'll go to my 10, which is an iconic weapon, the Mega Man Blaster, but not the version you're thinking of. I'm thinking of the Mega Man Blaster from Dead Rising.
Oh, nice.
So this is just, like I said before, my list is very nostalgia and just personal memories. So this was a weapon that took forever to unlock. I don't know if either of you ever played Dead Rising, but to unlock the Mega Man Blaster, you had to kill 53,594 zombies. And then you would unlock the Mega Man Blaster, which had 300 shots in it per version of the weapon. So you could like pick up, I can't remember if you only could have one at a time, but you always just go back and get another one. So in that game, it was very powerful because most of the weapons broke after like a few hits or a few bullets. So having the Mega Man Blaster was just super overpowered. But like I said, you had to kill almost 54,000 zombies to get it.
Yeah, that sounds like having to play the game like 10 times already.
So at this point in my life, I was in, I think, early high school, and a bunch of my friends had this game. And what we'd all do is we'd all jump onto party chat on Xbox and just chat while playing our own games, by ourselves. So we'd all be just playing Dead Rising, and we would all be grinding for this Mega Man Blaster. And when I can't remember if we found it online or if we just figured it out, but it was just to get this thing. What you basically would do is you'd start a run, you just avoid all the story missions, and you just run to like the parking garage and get in a car and just drive around the whole clock. And by the end of like the in-game timer, you would have gotten to the 54,000 because you just be running over zombies the entire time.
That's not too bad.
No, it's like 5 or 6 hours straight of just driving cars into bodies, but
still a lot.
But all the work made it worth it to then play another run where you're just so overpowered you could do whatever you wanted.
Yeah, nostalgia definitely is a good fuel for these lists because, frankly, that's what gets anyone attached to a weapon is the time you spend with it.
Yep, or the time spent trying to get it in that case.
Yep. Contrary to that, my number 10 is actually one of the most recent ones I have experienced, which is Darktide's Plasma Gun.
I haven't played this. Darktide, what's the full title? Is it?
Yeah, it's so for anyone unfamiliar, it's Warhammer 40,000.
Okay.
And the plasma gun there is pretty much what you would expect from a big sci-fi gun. It shoots giant globs of super hot plasma, evaporates anything it hits, and then it explodes once all that unstable energy impacts. And unlike Fallout's pea shooter plasma gun, though, this one is borderline artillery. It one hit kills pretty much everything in the game, and the biggest guys are like 2 or 3 hits.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and true to the tabletop game, it has a chance of it. Well, it's not a chance in Darktide, but if you're careless with it, the gun will explode and instantly kill you instead.
Okay, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Is this like a gun that you can use constantly, or is it like a once in a while? Oh, so it's just okay.
Yep. Use constantly, just use with care because you gotta. Not only do you have ammo, but you're also watching a heat counter, and if you fire like more than 4 times in a burst, you will probably blow yourself up.
I feel like I would die so much because I'm in any game I play where you have to like worry about the heat on the gun or whatever. I always end up overcharging it. So so normally the punishment, like I'm thinking of, I played Earth Defense Force online a little bit, and like I would play some character that had a gun like that, and I would overheat, and then I couldn't like shoot it or move for a little bit. So in this case, I would actually just be dead. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but you'll take a lot of people out with you.
You know what? It's kind of good to go out like that. If I'm going to go out, I'd rather go out on my own terms.
Yeah. And the impact and sound design on all of the weapons in that game is just incredible. So it's such a faithful and just super meaty representation of that. It's so much fun to do. And there's this nice little beep when you're getting high where it's just going brr, 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 at you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I want to check that out. I played Vermintide a little bit. I assume it's similar, but that's a sci-fi instead of whatever.
It's very similar, but in terms of the core gameplay, they really stepped it up. There's some meta systems that people are like, it's not quite as good. There's like some issues with like mission variety and things like that, but I still don't care. I've put like 65 hours in. I'm still just like, dude, I click the button and the plasma gun makes everything explode and melt.
I'm gonna have to check that out at some point.
That's my number 10.
All right, so my number 9 is the Blades of Chaos from God of War.
Oh yes, I wondered if this one was gonna get some representation.
Yeah, so obviously, in spoilers for not the newest God of War, but the 2018 version, at like pretty much halfway through the game, you get the Blades of Chaos, and also in the older God of War games, you have it. But it's really a pretty unique weapon because it's basically like daggers with chains on it that he uses. I don't know if there's any other game that uses a similar type weapon, but it's obviously iconic with Kratos, and they're just really fun to use, especially in 2018 version specifically. I'm thinking of just when you get that, it just opens up so much. You feel so powerful, and the range on those blades are just so crazy.
Yeah, that definitely was a turning point for the combat for me in that one. Like I liked the axe, but that addition of the extra range and sweeping of the chaos blades was very much appreciated at that point.
Yeah, so this is actually on my list also. This is number 6 on my list. But unlike you, so you're talking more about the 2018 version. I talked more about the PS2, PSP versions, or PS3 also. I love the combat in those games. I do love the combat in 2018, but those old games, I feel like Blades of Chaos, they just never got old. Like they milked those things for so many games in a row being the main weapon, and I just feel like I never got sick of it personally. They're just so cool, like you were saying. And you're just like, you can use them to you're spinning them around, you're launching people in the air, you're stabbing the gods in the eyeballs with them. And I feel like what made them so cool, at least at the time, was even though now quick time events are definitely like worn out, no one really likes them anymore. But back then they were kind of new still, so like they would happen all the time. So it really let them like kind of show off all these crazy moves with the blades that you couldn't actually do while actually playing it. So it also just makes them seem like so badass.
A little extra animation flair.
Yeah. So Alex also wrote in with the Blades of Chaos. I'm not surprised that someone else wrote in about him. And then Poot wrote in about the axe also, which also was a very good weapon. But yeah, I think I'm still more partial to the blades.
Yeah, throwing an axe, sure, it's satisfying.
Yeah, like it's so satisfying to throw it and then like to have it like zoom it back to you when you call for it, like through enemies. Also very cool.
Yeah, I do have, which we'll talk about more later, because I do have axes later on in my list as well. So,
all right, yeah, we'll save a little bit more for that. But yeah, Blades of Chaos, super iconic also. So for me, my number 9 is a weapon from Ratchet and Clank series, the Groovatron.
Ooh, I almost put that on the list too.
So Moo and Ryochi also picked that. This one is interesting. It's not really a weapon that kills people. It is just a throwable that you throw into the battlefield, and it just makes it's like a disco ball, and all the enemies within the range of it just stop fighting you and just start dancing. And at least in the newest games, they all have like their own animations for the dancing, so it just makes it seem like it's just such a fun weapon. I mean, Ratchet and Clank has a lot of good weapon choices, but this one I just had to pick one, so this is the one I chose.
A mechanic that would be seen again in hit MOBA League of Legends with Sona, who can also stun lock people with dancing.
Now we're going too far. But yeah, Ratchet and Clank, I mean, I could have did a whole top 10 list with just weapons from Ratchet and Clank. They're just so good and creative, which I have one coming up next, funny enough. So
yeah, we have a couple more Ratchet and Clank weapon write-ins, but we'll save them for yours, just in case someone has the same thought as you did. But yeah, I just love the Groovatron. It's like also just one of those super useful weapons where just you're getting overwhelmed, you just toss it, and then it gives you time to like regroup, get yourself situated, and then also fight them while they're not fighting back.
Nice.
Also like that, it's like one of those. I feel like a weapon like this like normally wouldn't work on a boss in like a lot of other types of games, like something that is doing this like something that drastic, but in these games it does work on the bosses, and they also have their own unique dances, so it's so fun.
That's nice. I always wish developers would just let those status effects actually work on bosses, but find some more creative solution around the ease of abusability of it.
Right, yeah, because I feel like most games, it just whatever status you have, you like use it for the whole game, and then it gets to a boss, and it's like, okay, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's like, great, now I can do nothing but damage.
Yep, you just got to use your traditional weapons in Ratchet and Clank for bosses.
Well, yeah.
My number 9 is actually a pretty short one, but it's now we're getting into my nostalgic picks. The BioShock wrench doesn't need very much introduction.
Yep, it's and that is also my number 6. So
it's your trustworthy companion, and it's actually relevant through the whole game if you pick your perks right. Simple tool for a simple job, survival.
It's such a good, and actually, because I kind of combined it, so that's when I started getting to my categories. So I just put like the wrench in general, because I also wanted to include Ratchet and Clank wrench, because that's the main weapon in Ratchet and Clank, and it's also really useful. You can throw it in there, but yeah, BioShock, it's very powerful. So
wrench is also featured in Torchlight 2. You get a nice giant two-handed wrench there. So great weapons in games.
What do you have in Half-Life? A crowbar?
Yep, crowbar.
So.
Crowbar, yeah. So very similar, but not a wrench.
Yeah.
A crowbar.
Yeah.
Pretty sure you also have a wrench in the original Prey. Could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure you do.
Maybe. System Shock, I know, had. No, I might be wrong about that too, but I'm pretty sure System Shock 1 or 2 had a wrench as well.
Yeah, yep, you do. You do. I love that game. I should have thought of that too. There are some good weapons in that, but
yeah. So basically, everyone should just carry a wrench around with them, because it's impromptu. You might need it to fix some plumbing, or you might need it to whack somebody in the head.
Yeah, maybe Mario should take a lesson there.
Really?
You'd think he would have one, but I guess he's not violent, other than all the murder he does.
He just jumps on people.
Yeah, how different those games would be if he was carrying around his true signature tool of the job.
Speaking of BioShock, our interestingly named listener, PP and Balls, he wrote in about the BioShock shotgun. Also, that was a quick shout out from him.
Nice. That is a good one.
Yep.
Load up Electric Buck.
All right, so my number 8 is the Sheepinator from Ratchet and Clank, which is similar. It's a little different than the Groovatron, because this gun, you just turn all the enemies into sheep, which they have some variations. They also have a chicken one too, but I remember using this one specifically. I think it was in Going Commando and the remake of the original, but it's very nice because you just kind of like with what Parrot was saying before, if you get overwhelmed, you just turn the enemies into sheep and they can't hurt you, and then you just can hit them if you want and they die, or you can just let them go. So,
but then you'll feel terrible about yourself for hitting an innocent sheep.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I didn't pick this one. I was like, oh no, but the sheep, they're so cute. I don't want to kill them. This is the same weapon that Ryochi and Poot wrote in about.
Must be a popular one.
It is. So that one and the Groovatron got the most, and then Sam also wrote in with Mr. Zircon, which is another great weapon.
Yeah, no, I thought about doing that one too, but because there's just so many good weapons in Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, like you said, we could have easily done just like a top 10 Ratchet and Clank weapon. Maybe we will one day, but there's so many good choices. And there's so many that are like recurring too, that not all the guns are in all the games, but a lot of the ones that are like in multiple games are all so good.
I haven't played a single one of those games, to be honest.
Any of the Ratchets? Whoa. Nope. You definitely need to. Oh, they're so good. What about the Slies? Have you played those?
Nope.
Oh, we got some. Well, maybe I was thinking next year we might do a Sony 3D platformers, or at least Sony type games. So we'll add those to the list. Maybe you can start then.
Yeah, there's a clear trend in the games I played like pre 2007, where if it was a mainstay of the console, probably didn't play it.
You're just too much of a hipster. You couldn't play it.
This was a Quake 2 on Nintendo 64 family. Thank you very much.
What color was that cartridge? Was it just gray?
I think it was just gray.
Yeah.
It was the Quake logo. It was green though.
Nice.
So my number 8 is the one that I think there was a 0% chance anybody was ever going to write in about, and I was correct. And that is a weapon from Saints Row, your hand, the Protect the Pimp hand. I think we talked about this in one episode recently. I can't remember, but there was a multiplayer mode where it was one team versus the other. One team was on defense; they had to stop the other team from getting to the end, and the other team, the offensive team, was just get to the end. But not everybody needed to get to the end. Just the pimp who had like a super amount of health but had no range. But he would slap you, and you just go flying ragdoll across the map, one hit kill. So this is another we played this game. My friends and I played this game. I don't know that there's too many people in the world that played this game online more than we did. So we probably spent like hundreds of hours playing this mode. So I just had to shout it out. The Protect the Pimp hand.
Filled the servers on your own.
Pretty much.
Which Saints Row was it? 3?
No, just one. Saints Row 1 and Xbox 360.
Saints Row 1?
Yep.
Oh yeah, you were probably alone in there.
Yep.
This mode needs to come back though. That's something incredible.
It was so good. And there's also team killing, so it got to just every match turned into just like a hectic mess where someone would accidentally kill someone on their own team, and then they'd all just be killing each other, and the pimp is slapping his teammates across the map while you're fighting. It was just always insane.
Nice. Oh, that sounds lovely.
Great game. I wish it could come back. I was just looking into this the other day. I think there's some way to play like some sort of like PC version, fan servers. I gotta get back in on this so I can slap people again.
Well, my number 8, for a half second when you said the Sheepinator, I was thinking you were also pulling a weapon from the same game, but no, the game I'm pulling from just has exploding sheep that you send out. In any case, my number 8 is from Worms, and it's the Banana Bomb, which is a mainstay through the whole series, and it works almost exactly the same every single time. It's a bouncing grenade with like Super Ball level of bouncing. So you throw it out, you have to be very careful because that could end up anywhere. Then it explodes into a cluster of smaller bananas that then bounce everywhere, and then they all do big damage. So when it finally got to the point where you said, screw it, I'm going to use the Banana Bomb, which if you wanted to have a serious round, you put a time limit on that thing so it doesn't unlock until like the 4th turn. Yeah, there's a good chance you blew yourself up just as much as there was the enemies. In either case, the entire landscape of the match was going to change once people started chucking that thing, and it was glorious.
Pure chaos.
Oh, yes.
I was just looking up a video. So you seem to like the weapons that are going to kill others and yourself. That seems to be a theme so far. 2 out of 3.
I think that's the last one on there, but it's very, very, it's a very fun theme. It is, especially in multiplayer.
I totally agree. It's just the risk reward of that is always fun. And I'm like, sounds like you and I are the same. I'm just like, yeah, let's go for it. And then does it work for me? Not a lot of time it doesn't, but gotta go for it.
That is a weapon of mutually assured destruction once it enters the field.
All right. So my number 7. So for this one, I put like a staff or a cane, and specifically I was thinking of Estelle's staff, of course, from Trails in the Sky.
Yes.
Or I also was thinking Sly Cooper's cane, which I would hope Ryochi wrote in about this.
I was about to say he wrote in about that.
Yeah, because it's such a unique weapon, because it's like you use it for platforming and it's also a weapon. But I just like the staff, like even back to Estelle, because like in the JRPG or any game, you don't really just have like a long staff you can use. But yeah, those were the 2 main ones I was thinking of.
That actually is kind of a staple weapon for me from early BioWare RPGs. Neverwinter Nights, Knights of the Republic 1, and then Jade Empire were all games where I spent a good portion of them running around with a staff.
I love the Estelle staff for sure.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really iconic. But yeah, I figured Ryochi would write in because Sly Cooper's staff is so iconic with his character.
Yeah, and now Connor needs to play it.
Yeah, eventually.
So what would you say? Would you say Estelle's staff is your favorite of all of them?
I would say so. I don't really know what the name is. That's like, because I wasn't sure whether to put the staff and cane as separate or a different weapon, because they're kind of like the same. The cane just has a hook on it too. But yeah, Estelle's staff, especially because obviously it's Estelle, would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, and she has a way of making it look more iconic with all her animations and combat with it.
Just spinning it around looks cool.
Yes, always does.
Speaking of spinning, my number 7 is the cape from Super Mario World.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that, but yeah, that's definitely my favorite Mario power up. So
yep, me too, because it gives you the weapon part. You can spin and knock enemies, like flip them over, kill them, whatever. And then it also doubles as a movement ability where you can run, and when you get to the right speed, you can jump and fly over all the obstacles. So yeah, Super Mario World is my favorite of all the 2D Mario games. I played this so much as a kid, growing up. Even now, I play it once in a while. So, I always would just, like when I was younger, I don't know why. I think I either was just really bad at things. I didn't know how to save. I don't know, but I was just always starting this game over, and I would just try to get go through the first world as fast as possible so I could get to the part with the cape. I always just love flying around with it and flipping people over with it.
Spinning. It's a neat trick.
It is.
It's funny that it's the only game where it's ever been in too. Like they never bring back the cape in any other Mario game,
which is a shame.
You know, I never thought. I think you are right, aren't you? It isn't back in any other game.
Just a Mario Maker, but that's with the Mario World engine. But yeah, they brought back the Tanuki tail, and they kind of just replaced the tail with it, or the power up with it. But the cape's definitely better.
Yeah,
I spent so many hours trying to figure out how to fly with the cape when I was a kid.
I couldn't possibly figure it out.
It was so difficult originally.
Well, at least in Super Mario Brothers 3 with the Tanuki tail, that had like a meter that you build up, you could see on the bottom, where in World you don't have one. It's just based on his running animation.
Yep. You do it right, then it's just like, all right, I'm just going to bypass the rest of the level now.
Yeah. It took me forever to actually learn how to fly with it properly, not just fly straight into the air, then crash back to the ground.
Yeah.
So you have to actually go up and down, up and down. It's so satisfying. I had to get a Mario weapon shout out here.
Oh yeah. One of the secret exits that you have to get in the game too, if you remember, it's like over Donut Bridge. Like you have to fly underneath the goal and then fly up to get the next goal to unlock one of the levels. That one's so hard to do because you can't go too low or too high. Or if you go too high, you'll hit the goal, and if you go too low, you'll die. So you have to kind of thread the needle with it.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Hey, you know what? Maybe I have to replay this game again soon.
It's a great game. One might say the best Mario game ever made.
One might say one of the best games ever made.
One might. All right. That part where I might have said that my list was full of elegance, that's an abject lie. Now that I'm looking at it again. The next weapon on my list is from FTL, Faster Than Light, and it's the flak cannon. This is the rest of the game, it's known for being very difficult, demands a lot of precise use of all the interesting weaponry to get through a bunch of challenging combat encounters. And then there's the flak cannon, which just says, hey, can you break their shields and then time their blast? That's all you have to do. And then you watch them shred to pieces as 15 little rocks all just hurtle straight into their exposed hole. And it's wonderful. So satisfying every time when I finally unlocked a ship that started with it. I was like, yep, this is how I'm finally going to finish this game.
So is this like a weapon you unlock later on?
Well, you can get most of the weapons at any
point,
feasibly any point, but it's a roguelike. So if you want to get it reliably, you have to basically start with it. But just sends a chunk of rocks at someone, they don't do anything if they have a shield, but if they don't have a shield, every compartment in the ship basically gets damaged.
I haven't played this game in so long. I honestly forgot it existed. Because I remember around when this game was really popular, I think it was right when I was going to college and I just got a MacBook. So I finally had a computer that could play a game for like the first time in my entire life. And I remember getting this game and playing it a lot. I don't think I got very far, so I don't remember this specific weapon, but I always did like this game.
It's an incredible game. It's probably one of my top 3, if not my favorite roguelike of all time.
I'm going to have to try it again one day. It's not a co-op game, right? It's just normal single player. Yeah. It's been so long.
It's just so easy. Just pick up, play for like 40 minutes and lose.
The losing's the key, right?
I've beaten it one time.
Oh my god.
Like 20 hours I put into it.
That is not a ringing endorsement for me.
Yeah, now I'm scared. Maybe I don't.
No. It's great because you lose in the most exciting and hilarious ways. It's like it perfectly captures that sense when you're watching like a classic episode of Star Trek and you're watching them all panic and try to get all the systems on the ship in order. It just gets just like the things I have done to limp along in that game, where it's just like, all right, everyone is in one compartment of the ship where there's still air and there is air nowhere else. So slowly refilling the thing while I'm just hoping the next node I go to is not another enemy to finish me off.
Oh god.
Then surprise, you go to a new planet and someone teleports a giant bug onto the ship and you're dead.
Maybe this game is best left to my memory. Maybe it's not going to go well for me.
Elegance.
Truly. So, Straw, your 6 was already talked about, and so was mine. Mm-hmm. So, we can take a quick little pause here and read some listener write-ins. So one little section of write-ins was all from the game Destiny, which everyone knows how I feel about Destiny, but since I'm such a gracious host, I will still read them. Alex wrote in about the Gallarhorn and the Last Word.
Yeah, those are good.
And then Edwin wrote in with the Invective shotgun from Destiny 1.
I barely remember that one.
And then, just to finish off, Edwin also wrote in about the Hollow Seeker with Portal Beam and Returnal. You played that, right, Connor?
Oh, yeah. Okay, the Hollow Seeker is a pretty fun game, gun. I think that's like one of the few I actually liked.
Yeah, it's
I haven't finished that game yet, though, and I didn't even realize I had it.
It's the one that's like, he wrote in about it. It's the one that like is like a turret kind of. It like slowly shoots at first and then winds up and then starts shooting full speed.
Yeah. From Destiny, I almost forgot about this weapon. Probably wouldn't have put it in my top 10, but I have to give a quick shout out to the Graviton Lance, which was my go-to for Destiny 2. That thing was so much fun in PvP because it shoots a couple times and then like on the third one, it does a miniature black hole. If you hit them. So it's just a nice little pop on the, I think it was every third hit. I can't quite remember, but that was a ton of fun.
Some other shout outs. We have a section of weapons just from Souls games. Edwin also wrote in about one of these. He said the starting samurai sword in Elden Ring.
Uchi-Katana.
Yeah, he said I thought it was interesting. I have not played this, but he said he need to shout out a weapon good enough to carry you through 100 hours.
Yes, it can do.
Sam wrote in with a few. He wrote Rivers of Blood Katana and Dark Moon Greatsword from Elden Ring.
Yep.
And then Ludwig's Holy Blade and Saw Cleaver from Bloodborne.
The Saw Cleaver is a classic. I use that one a bit in what I've played of the game.
And then Alex wrote in a weapon from Souls games, but of course it is something I do not know how to say. The Zweihander? Zweihander. No, I was close.
Yeah, it's just a German word for a two-handed sword, basically.
Gotcha. So he wrote in about those.
That's a good one.
And then a few more quickly. Moki wrote in the unpatched model 1887s in COD Modern Warfare 2.
Oh boy.
And then the Polar Star from Cave Story. And then
I played a little bit of that.
Yeah, that is a game that I played in that when I was talking about when I got my laptop for the first time in college, I played that. And I really liked it, but yeah, it's been so long at this point. It's very, very like far in my mind. I hardly remember it other than like, oh yeah, I liked that.
It's kind of funny that you say that now, because now I think about it, FTL and Cave Story were 2 games I played when I first got a laptop when I started
Yep.
doing college.
Yeah, that's what it was for me. Just a few years before you. And then Ryochi had one more that we haven't shouted out. He wrote the service weapon from Control, which is a really, really good choice.
Oh yeah,
I'm trying to. I did play Control. Which one is
It's
that?
just the gun because it just
okay.
it gets modular. I actually have another weapon on my list later that I'll talk about in a similar way, but it just gets attachment. So it's just like one weapon that you use the whole game, but it has so many different ways of using it. So it's a really good, really cool choice.
It's a very fun weapon design.
Yep, quite a few more, but we will get back to our list. So Connor, you can go with us. You're number 6.
Right. So this is where we really start to get into the meat of it with the Halo classic weapon. And there's a lot of good weapons there, say the energy sword for one, or even just the basic assault rifle. But the one that is the cream of the crop, the thing that is truly the Connor approved Halo weapon, is the Needler.
Oh yeah.
Even I know that, and I haven't played it yet.
Yeah. And now the one I'm the most familiar with and is my go-to is the Halo 3.
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
For this list, I'm going to have to go with the Halo 1 because it's like the one that really just defines what it is. You just see those little pink glowing darts slowly trailing their way into whatever you were aiming at. And then once enough of them pin in, they super combine into that. If I refuse to play Halo 1 with the enhanced graphics because this changed, but the original version was just that nice clean pink disc of death. It's just the disco gun. So fun.
I love the Needler. That's such a good choice. Yeah, I'm definitely more familiar with the Halo 3 version.
Yeah, that's the one that actually gets you a ton of kills in multiplayer.
Yep. Yeah, because it's just pretty much just like if you were aimed right and you just shoot the clip at them, they're dead.
Yep.
It's over. Yeah, Halo is another one that you could do like almost a whole list just on Halo, but
absolutely.
Yeah, and my honorable mentions, I had the energy sword because that is such a fun weapon.
Especially in Halo 2, where you can launch yourself across the map with it.
Yep. Yeah, like I have more experience in 2 and 3 for sure than because I played 2 online like a little bit, but I got 2 right before 3 came out because I never had an Xbox until I got a 360. So my time with 2 is very minimal, but yeah, playing like the swords on Halo 3 online was so cool. And like when you both would have a sword and you're like at each other and just fighting is so cool.
Great weapons.
And then a couple more shout outs. I had a feeling a Halo weapon would pop up, so I didn't read these before. Poot wrote in with the brute shot from Halo. Ooh. I like that one too. That's the one that has like the sword, like the knife on the other end, right?
A big old machete on the base. And then that one's got the explosive effect, so it's great for jump tricks.
Yeah. Brandon wrote in the Halo 1 pistol, the most overpowered pistol in any game, probably. Yeah. And then Alex wrote in with the classic Halo 2 battle rifle.
Yep. That one's
that's a very iconic weapon for sure.
The meta online still to this day of that game.
Yeah, and that's why I don't play Halo online because I'm not good at that weapon, so I always just die.
Same.
Because I'm pretty sure Halo 2 didn't have the assault rifle. I would have shouted out the assault rifle too. I always loved that in Halo 1, but it wasn't in 2. And then they brought it back for 3, and it's in like the modern ones. But like now, like when you play like the new Halo online, it gives you the battle rifle and the machine gun. So I'm running around with this machine gun while all these other people are just shooting me from across the map with the battle rifle. It's like, okay, I just can't play this.
Halo 3, best meta the series ever saw.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, so now we can those are our bottom 5 each. Now we can move into our top 5s.
All right, so my number 5. So I shouted out the shotgun in general here, but specifically, which is funny because I was thinking about the BioShock shotgun because that is a really good one. But I'm going to shout out a shotgun that probably nobody else is going to think of. I'm curious if you remember this, Connor, but I'm going to shout out the Storm Gun from XCOM 2.
Oh, I just barely remember it because I definitely used shotguns quite a bit on some of my units.
Yeah, so that's like the most upgraded shotgun in XCOM 2. So you can imagine you want something because you got to get up close. It does a lot of damage and it's more accurate because that's the big problem in XCOM. Obviously, you miss too much, but yeah, the shotgun, that's a really great one. So that's specifically the one I wanted to shout out.
Yeah, it being an in-game weapon is probably means I never saw it very much in the time I spent in XCOM. Because as I was saying right before we recorded, I only played it. I, I only played it on Iron Man, so the amount of times I actually saw the end game very small compared to the amount of time I spent in the game.
Yeah, even like I was telling Connor, I'm like I love playing on like the hardest difficulty in strategy games, especially Fire Emblem, but XCOM I just do the hardest before Iron Man. I don't do Iron Man.
Because isn't XCOM set up in a way where if you are doing bad enough, like you just have to start the whole game over, right?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I can't do. I'm just like, no way.
I restarted very, very, very many times in that series.
I think that would just break me if that ever happened to me. It would just be over. I would never
There's
play
something-
XCOM again. I would probably never play a video game again. I just couldn't do it.
That was the same period of time that I was playing a lot of FTL, so there was something wrong with me then.
That is, there's nothing wrong with you now, though, right? Yeah, we'll get back to that later. Yeah, we'll just say that I have a shotgun that we're going to talk about later on, so I'll save that for later. But we have another shotgun that got 2 write-ins. Both Poot and Alex wrote in about the super shotgun from Doom Eternal.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a classic one.
Yeah, just the shotguns in Doom in general. I have always loved playing just like the original Dooms. I had them on 360, and the shotgun, even in those really old Dooms, the shotgun's just so good.
Yeah, I was half tempted to do like the Quake 3 shotgun, but that I ended up going with a different id Soft weapon instead, as we'll find out later.
All right, well, I'll save my question for then. So we'll move on to my number 5, which is the Poltergust from Luigi's Mansion.
Ooh, I almost put that in. I was like, that is such a good weapon.
Yep, this cool little backpack. Each of the 3 Luigi's Mansion games has a slightly different model or whatever, but they're all the same. A vacuum backpack to suck up all the ghosts. It can shoot elements. In the first game, it has water, fire, and ice, I believe. And yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, you just flash a ghost with the flashlight, and then you're just struggling against them. Pulling back on the control stick to try to absorb them into the vacuum. But yeah, I just love Luigi's Mansion. The whole gameplay is just based just around this one weapon.
Yeah, and such a delightful twist on the Ghostbusters aesthetic, because I have no doubt that they were like basically basing it on that, but they were just like, how do we make the fun Mario version of that?
Well, it helps having it be invented by like one of the most bizarre Nintendo characters ever.
Yeah.
With his just crazy glasses or whatever. I don't know if those are his eyes look like that or just his glasses. I guess we don't know.
I think is also like because in the third one is Gooigi also part of that weapon because he gets like a gooey clone of himself.
Right. I can't remember specifically, but I'm going to claim him. So Gooigi also counts as my number 5. Yeah, this is just a series I've talked about, quite a few times, I'm sure. I just love Luigi's Mansion. I played this so much, and I like the sequels too. 3 was really good. 2 was all right, but I really just love the original, especially.
Yeah, 1 I love 3 a lot, but yeah, 1 is special. I'm sure we'll do episodes on all of them. Maybe not 2, but we'll definitely do one on each 1 and 3. I would want to because I love the Luigi's Mansion series.
Funnily enough, in my household, the person who latched onto Luigi's Mansion was my sister. I never got to finish it.
Oh man, you have to.
I think she just liked the fact that it was a mansion, and then probably the whole vacuuming it part.
It is satisfying to clean everything up and because you try to get money too, so you like vacuum up coins and dollar bills and diamonds and pearls.
Yeah, and it's interesting how they really just use this one weapon that has a few different abilities, and they just build the whole game around it, and puzzles for each of the ghosts based really just around one It's one mechanic basically, and they were able to build a whole 3 games about it.
Yeah, it was really neat. All right, so my number 5 is it's a classic weapon type in sci-fi games that I've just always loved in almost every permutation I see. But the one in particular I wanted was the Metal Gear Solid 4 railgun. I don't. Neither of you remember that thing?
I don't really remember it specifically. I mean, I remember Metal Gear Solid 4, but
Yeah. So it was. I'm pretty sure you got it off of beating one of the bosses. And the thing that made it really special to me was seeing this as like, okay, now this is the first railgun I'd ever seen in game was the Quake 3 one, which is very like future sci-fi where it's not so grounded. But then the Metal Gear Solid iteration tries to take this very grounded, sort of realistic approach to the concept, but then they also have that just
Craziness.
that super fun effect where you're going to fire it, it's charging up, it's gaining all that power. You see the sparks of electricity just flying off of it, and then it just destroys whatever you're aiming at. Tanks, people, bosses, just chunks them to death compared to all of those otherwise mundane guns in the game. And then there's that. Had an extra effect. Loved it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I only played Metal Gear Solid 4 once. I played all the other ones a couple times, but so this is not particularly. I don't really remember this one too well. But looking at the video, it's just so kind of just like you're saying. It's such a like grounded world. So I feel like just a normal person is like quick looking at Metal Gear Solid, like, oh, that's just like a realistic game. But this weapon shows that it is definitely not.
Yeah. This is not Splinter Cell.
No.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid 4 was the first one I ever got to play, so that's the one I remember the most.
Yeah, for me it was. I think I played Twin Snakes first, but 3 is the one I played the most.
3 is probably my favorite now. I just
Yeah,
love that Cold War aesthetic to it.
yeah,
And
I think
story.
2 and 3 are definitely. I like 2, I think, the most, but 3's right neck and neck with it. So
Yeah.
Shout out just simply shout out like the pistol knife combo in 3. Always loved like how he like when he would like scrape the side of the gun so he could hold the knife up to it or whatever.
Yep.
I just love that. Just like the visual of that. It was always so cool to me.
Yeah. Great weapon work in that game.
all right, so we're at number 4, correct?
Yep.
All right, so for this one, I wanted to shout out axes in general, and we kind of talked about the Leviathan axe from God of War already, which is a great axe, but this is where we're going to start getting into some Fire Emblem stuff, because specifically one of the axes I love to use in Fire Emblem that comes up so clutch is the Tomahawk.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's an axe that you can throw, and axe wielders typically have a lot of power and not the best accuracy, but their tomahawks are, it's not, you usually don't get a tomahawk till way later in the game because you have a hand axe originally, which are also really good, but the tomahawk is pretty much what the axe you want to give to your best axe wielder, because you get the ability to throw it, which is huge for the axe wielder, like I said, and it's way more accurate.
Move very far.
Yep, and it's really strong. So the Tomahawk's always one of my favorite weapons to get in a Fire Emblem game.
Yeah, and since the axe wielders typically have a lot of armor, it almost always ends up being one of those great like counter archer items. It's just like you could try hitting me over the wall, but it's a big armored dude with a nice big axe who's gonna actually be able to hit you back.
Yep. I mean, and there's a lot of good axes like the Killer Axe, the Brave Axe. I even like the Bold Axe is a good idea in theory because it's like an axe that shoots lightning magic. But typically, your axe wielders have terrible magic, so it doesn't really do that much. But yeah, I really like the axe wielders in general in Fire Emblem, but Tomahawk, hard to beat.
Very nice.
I think Poot had the Leviathan axe, which is, I mean, like, I think the best part of it is that you can just throw it because it's so cool to just, you throw it and then it comes back like a boomerang.
Yeah. And it's like very like Thor. Like it makes you feel like, you know, like just throwing it and then calling it back to you and having it hit people on the way back is just so cool.
Yeah, and you do still get all those nice big meaty like wood chopping axe hits with it too.
Yeah, it just feels powerful. Like just the way it swings just feels so cool.
And you can get headshots with an axe. That's pretty cool.
That's true. So my number 4 is similar to my me talking about the Mega Man blaster. So this is another weapon that is just a lot of it is about earning it, and that is the Chicago typewriter in Resident Evil 4. This is one of those weapons that you had to unlock after multiple playthroughs. And at this point, I had this game on GameCube, and I played it like 5 times, which I felt like was a lot. Like you guys know me, I don't normally replay games very much. But I had a friend that played this game 15 times or whatever. But so this was one of the weapons that you got after. I can't remember exactly how you got it. You had like save credits over playthroughs, and then you would finally unlock this thing, and then it just basically breaks the game because it's just a machine gun that has unlimited ammo and never has to reload.
Yeah. At that point, they might as well let you break the game since you're that committed.
Right.
Yeah. Because you could also get the infinite rocket launcher also. And I remember the rocket launcher, you could just, as soon as they hit a boss, they just died. So it's just, you could just run through with like between the Chicago typewriter and the rocket launcher. You just didn't have to do anything.
At that point, you might wonder, why am I still playing the game?
Yep.
And the obvious answer is aesthetic.
Yep. And then you're like, okay, I got these infinite weapons. I'll just play the whole game like 10 more times like this.
Yeah, why not?
Sam also wrote in with a couple weapons from Resident Evil 4, specifically the Silver Ghost and the Red 9. I don't remember the Silver Ghost off the top of my head. I haven't played this game in a while, but I do remember the Red 9.
I remember the Red 9. That was one of the pistols, right?
Yep.
I almost only used the pistols, so...
I did too, honestly. I remember using the pistols a lot more than anything else. The pistol and then like that shotgun. I remember like there was like multiple different versions of the shotgun. I would just always use those 2 things, and that was about it.
Shoot them in the knees, run over, stab them in the head while they're on the ground.
Or suplex them. That was always
or
the
suplex
best.
Them.
Or shoot them in the head, and then when they're holding their face, just spin kick them.
Yeah.
So good.
How that combat was so fun for unexpectedly.
Yep.
All right. So for my number 4, I am one-upping Straw Hat on the weapons triangle, and this is my sword pick. Frankly, swords should be higher on my list since I just love them so much. When I was a little kid, I drew 2 things: dragons and swords. So definitely had to be one on here somewhere. And the one I ended up going with was actually a little bit more on the recent side for me, which is Reen's Tachi from Trails of Cold Steel. And what I like about this one is just how elegant it is without being flashy. It's a very it's actually grounded in an actual sword design with the Japanese tachi, which is a longer and it was used further back in history than when the katana was popular. And I like how they chose that type for him, since there's a bit of a connection there with it being more of a weapon for a cavalry dominated warfield, things like that. And I like how they added that hilt or that cross guard to the katana design without making it seem too out of place or too Western, where it just is mostly on the back, so it kind of fits the sweep of the blade, but it's still, you could kind of feasibly see it being used as a defensive aspect of the weapon. So just all around, love the thing. Looks so cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm gonna have to talk more about swords later too, but I did think about putting his, and I also thought it's interesting that they chose that weapon for Reen, the main character, specifically, rather than like Laura's weapon, because she has like a great sword, 2-handed weapon that looks way more flashy. Like it's more like a traditional Buster sword type. But yeah, I do like the Taichi look, and they even have some of those in Fire Emblem too, like the katanas, especially in Fire Emblem Fates, because that they have more of like the Eastern weapons. So I just always think they do look really cool.
Yep. I just like that it wasn't just a generic katana. It was actually specifically this type, and it was accurate to that.
Yeah, I'll shout out a couple of swords that people wrote in.
Nice.
And I don't know all these weapons, so I had to look up some. So if I miss some of these, so if some of the weapons I read later were also swords, my fault. But both Sam and Gremlin wrote in about the Red Queen from DMC5. Have either of you guys played those?
I haven't played any of the DMC games.
I've been starting my Devil May Cry journey, but it's going to be a bit before I get to that one.
Yeah, I've only played the DMC reboot that I think people hate, but I liked it.
That's the only one I have, actually, so I'll play it at some point.
All right, we should move on quick. Alex wrote in the Longsword from Monster Hunter.
Nice. Weep Stick.
And then Grem also wrote in, of course, we can't mention Gremlin in an episode without also Dragon Quest. He wrote in the Sword of Light from Dragon Quest.
That is a good one. I should have thought of that one. But yeah, that's a really good one because it's, well, I don't want to spoil, but you need the Sword of Light actually that does good against certain bosses. Like it has other abilities too, so it's a really good weapon to shout out.
Then we have a couple other swords, but I think there's a chance that one of them might get red, so we'll just wait till Straw goes.
I do have some later. So yeah, I'm sure there's one that got written in about that I bet you I have as well. So
yep, so we'll just move on to your number 3.
All right, yeah, so my number 3, I put pistols in general. Now I do have a specific pistol I put, but I also want to shout out in Fallout 4 specifically, I loved using a pistol because one of the companions had a broken ability, which they patched later. So thankfully I played the game first, but they basically made so no matter what, it was always a 95% chance to get a headshot. And the pistol used the least amount of action points. So I think I had a pistol that you could get like 8 headshots in one bar. So it was completely broken, but I loved it. But the pistol I specifically want to shout out is from Overwatch, and I don't know McCree's new name, but it's his pistol Deadlock. McCrizzle. But his pistol Deadlock, I just love playing. Like when I played Overwatch a ton, it just feels so good to use that 6-shooter. I don't know why, but I wasn't that great with them, but it was one of my favorite weapons to use because it just feels so satisfying to use the pistol and then you reload it, and it's just a great pistol, I feel like.
Yeah, it is satisfying, but I could never get a handle on it for some reason, which is ironic considering that my main was Widowmaker. So you would think the accuracy part wouldn't be an issue, but I never could aim with it for some reason.
It's a little different because you didn't really have a scope and you had to get really good at like the flick shots with them.
Yeah.
His new name is Cassidy, by the way.
Butch Cassidy or something.
I'm still going with McCrizzle. That's much better.
So that, pistols, that is I will get to my favorite pistols. My number 2 is my favorite pistol, so we'll get to that later. But
I don't have any pistols on my list, but the Fallout New Vegas 9mm was my go-to in that game.
I also just feel like I kind of default to pistols like in games because you usually have the most ammo for the pistols compared to other weapons. And I feel like it's easier to get headshots too with them. So I just like to go to the pistol in general.
They get the extra aim assist on pistols usually.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like definitely like I'm playing a Resident Evil game right now, but just like whenever I play a survival horror game, that's definitely how I am because you get the most ammo for the pistol, so I just use that until I can't, and then I'm always so stingy with ammo for other weapons except the pistol.
Yeah.
But since you mentioned Fallout, Brandon wrote in about the Fat Man from Fallout.
Oh yeah.
That's like a nuke, pretty much. If you don't know that is, so it pretty much destroys everything.
Kind of like the BFG from Doom, right? Mm-hmm. That's how that game. That's how that kind of is too.
I would put it in a different class
Even
entirely,
more?
And that goes with the banana bomb type weapons of things that when I pull out, I might accidentally kill myself with 50% of the time.
Since we mentioned it, I'm going to shout out one of my honorable mentions was the biotic launcher from Overwatch, the Baptiste gun. I just love that thing.
I could never get a handle on using him. He was the one support I just could not. I don't know why, but
I love that gun. It's like half healing and then half killing, and you can just hold both triggers and just go to work, and I have to think about it. But now we'll move on to my number 3, which is the Flood from Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, that's a good one. Another one I thought about, but I couldn't put.
So this is kind of what I was talking about before. This is just a modular weapon, and the whole game is based around it. So the only real way you have of attacking this game is the flood, but then you unlock multiple nozzles to allow you to navigate, both fight bosses, fight the enemies, navigate. It's just like it is one weapon or / tool that is like the whole game is based around.
Yeah, I feel like the hover nozzle by far gets the most use, and then I would say the rocket. I feel like the turbo nozzle really doesn't. It's like outside of a few shine sprites you need it for, they really don't use it that much. But I love the rocket nozzle, especially because you just blast yourself up way up high in the air.
Yeah.
Oh, the turbo nozzle is the one that makes you go fast, right?
Yeah, across the water and stuff.
Yes, that one was my favorite because that was the one that makes you go fast.
Yeah, it's so fun, but yeah, like Straw said, you don't really use it very much.
Yeah, I feel like they
Well, you don't need to use it very much.
That's correct.
Yeah, I just feel like they didn't really utilize it as much as they should have.
Probably not, but I made sure to use it anyways, even when it would absolutely backfire.
Yeah, I just like the hover nozzle. That's still my favorite. It's the simple answer, but it is the most just versatile because you can navigate with it, but you also can take out like enemies, like especially in those early levels. You're just learning how to play, and there's all those little like jellyfish things around.
Yeah,
so you can just like jump up and then just kill them all by just like hovering over them. So you're just kind of like killing two birds with one stone. You're getting to where you need to go while also taking out any obstacles like under you.
And it's such an iconic viewpoint. Like it's such an iconic look for the game too. When you're sitting there hovering, and that you got that little bit of a top-down camera, and you're seeing those two streams of pretty well rendered water just swizzling back and forth over stuff.
Also, this weapon can talk. So think about that. That gets it bonus points.
It does actually always give bonus points. I was thinking of giving my top sword slot to a talking sword in Neverwinter Nights. So
I thought you were going to say in a transistor.
That's another one that I thought of putting up. Talking sword's pretty great.
Yeah, sometimes you want your weapon to let you know how it's feeling about killing.
Yep. And then in the complete, I like this Parrot in classic style has got some more of these family friendly guns and weapons, and then immediately after you have me, and we all probably know about the Gears of War 2 chainsaw gun, right? Yeah. Well, I'm going with one of its predecessors, its progenitors, if you will, the Quake 3 Gauntlet, which is it's a buzzsaw gauntlet. There's a big old chain blade or like a saw blade on it. It spins. You have like 0 range, and the damage is only all right. So when you pulled this weapon out, one of two things was true. You're stupid and you're out of ammo, or you were about to go punk on someone and humiliate them out of the server. And I was frequently in both camps because I just could not get enough of the satisfaction of those perfect midair collisions where you soften them up or someone else softened them up. Maybe they're not even looking at you, but you see them coming off a jump pad. You go the opposite jump pad, pull out the gauntlet, get it going, collide, and they just burst into meat chunks.
It looks so awesome.
I can't speak to that gun, but it's funny because really the only Gears of War game I played was Gears Tactics because it's an XCOM clone, but it's even satisfying to use that in there. It's just there's something about a chainsaw gun that's just so cool.
Yeah. So of all the weapons in Quake 3, which is the first shooter game I ever remember playing, I was like 4 years old when I started playing it on my dad's lap. And lots of great weapons there, but the Gauntlet was the one that was just like that's the one that really captures that experience for me.
How do you feel Quake holds up today? I've never played one before.
Well, I still am working on the first 2 games of their campaigns, mostly because they still terrify the crap out of me. They feel great. I think they hold up quite well. Quake 3 was actually exclusively a multiplayer one, and that was the one I spent the most time in. But yeah, love those games.
That's something I would like to check out at some point. Actually, I lied. I played Quake Champions one time. I don't really think anybody likes that one, though.
It's Again, at its core, it should have been fine, but there's some issues with things like the netcode and just small balance stuff where it's just like this isn't quite right. But I enjoyed it for a time.
All right, so my number 2 is, now I do have a specific one, but I just want to talk a little bit about the bow and arrow, because if there's a video game and I can use a bow, I'm probably gonna do that. It's funny enough though, the only time I really don't like it is Horizon, because even though that's like all you use in that game is the bow, but specifically Elisa, of course, from Trails uses a bow, which I always like when JRPGs kind of use like that bow character. And I'm going to talk about Fire Emblem because that's where I have my specific bow. But even in a game like Skyrim, there's nothing more satisfying than crouching, sneaking around, and just shooting somebody with a bow
That
with your
nice
stealth.
3x headshot damage.
Yep, and
Well,
then
not
it just
headshot,
like
but
kills them. So, and then Tears of the Kingdom, I was just playing. I use the bow so much. But the bow I'll specifically shout out is, which Parrot, you would know this from Three Houses. It's Claude's bow, the Fail Knot, which is, it's basically a bow that's made from a dragon bone. So it looks really cool. Like it has the different spikes in it. And well, you probably saw it. Well, no, you didn't have the DLC in Engage, Connor, because that's one of that bow is so absurdly powerful in that game. It'll like do 70 damage and hit twice or something like that. So,
well, I
but yeah,
did get to experience it in another piece of Nintendo DLC because it's one of Byleth's special attacks in Smash Bros. Ultimate, and
oh yeah, that's true.
oof, it's so hard to hit people with it because it's got a huge wind up with a fixed timing. But when you kill people with it, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's just like in Fire Emblem, especially in Three Houses, the bow is really powerful. But I just love like the long bow, the killer bow. It's just like I love the archers. I just, like I said, I'll always gravitate towards the bow, except in Horizon, where I don't really like shooting in that game for some reason. So,
How do you feel about the bow in Fortnite?
I don't know because I've shockingly never played Fortnite.
Wow.
Is this right in?
No, I loved using the bow in Fortnite when it was in there. I don't know if it's still in there, but I played for a while when it was added, and I used it all the time.
Yeah.
I always like the bow. I'm not as much into the bow in most games, but I like when it's like a stealth weapon element. That's what I usually like. Like I just am thinking of like the modern Tomb Raider reboot. Like I remember using the bow a lot, especially in the first one.
There's just something. I think it's just in the headshots always feel so satisfying with a bow.
Because you got to work for it more. You get that extra satisfaction, but it's not like so difficult to get that it's just a pain. So it's that nice balance between risk reward.
Also, in Engage, we can talk about too, like Lynn's, one of her special attacks. She has this bow that can hit from like halfway across the map. She just like shoots this torrential downpour of arrows on people. So,
which I abused as much as I could.
Actually, I like the bows in Fire Emblem too because you could hit people from further away, and I'm not very good at the game, so that was helpful. But yeah, we'll go on to my number 2, which is my favorite pistols in video games. And that is the dual silver baller from Hitman, specifically Hitman Blood Money. Because that game you started the game where I think he had 5 weapons, and then you can upgrade them as you earn money through the levels. So by the end, you can have your weapons like super decked out. And I would always put all the money into the silver ballers because then you go from 1 to 2, and then they get to be so silent that they don't make any noise whatsoever. And they also have like armor piercing bullets, and you also have like extended clips. So you have like, I don't know how many, but like you have like 30 bullets before you have to reload, and you can just walk around, just shoot people through the doors without them no one hearing it. You don't even have to look at them, and you're just running around, just like unloading on everybody, and no one even knows what's happening. It's just so satisfying. And then you hit them, and the bodies just start flying everywhere because of the ragdoll.
Yeah. So I'm hearing is Parrot loves those souped up weapons you get near the end of playing a game where you can just go wild.
And then you can just go back through the old levels with them. So good.
Yeah, but those are very distinct looking weapons. I've played one Hitman game, which is the one everyone hates. I think it was Absolution.
Yep.
And even I know that that distinct look the silver ballers have, and they're gorgeous. Love them.
Yeah, That's the one thing I don't like about the new trilogies. You never get the dual ones, as far as I know, unless they got added at some point later. But like they only ever let you have one, which was still the best, the amazing pistol. But the iconic look of having both of them is just so cool, and like how you like hide them, you like putting them in his coat and then pulling them out. It's just so cool.
Yeah, I will say dual pistols on a stealth mission is a bit of a overkill.
Once you're pulling those out, stealth's over.
But if you have an opportunity to use dual pistols, you do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, like they're so silent, it doesn't even matter. Like my favorite level in honestly, maybe one of my favorite levels in any video game ever is in Hitman Blood Money. There's the little neighborhood cul-de-sac level, and there's like a part where, and like towards the beginning of the level, like there's just these two guys like monitoring the house in a truck, I think it's like an ice cream truck or something. So you can just walk up with these two pistols and just unload into the back of the door. No one can hear them because apparently it's so silent that even the bullets don't make noise when they hit metal. But they can just go through, unload on everybody. You can just beat the whole level without even walking inside the room. It's just so cool.
Yeah, I tend to like the one pistol just because of the extra accuracy. Because I tend to play a game of seeing how close can I get to treating the pistol like a sniper rifle.
It's also satisfying, but there's also something satisfying about pulling out two and just letting throwing caution to the wind and just unloading.
Absolutely, yes. And leading into my number 2 is a sniper rifle, and specifically the Mass Effect M98 Widow.
Oh yeah, that's one of the best weapons.
As far as I'm concerned, it is the best weapon of the Mass Effect trilogy. First really gets featured in Mass Effect 2 as like a mid-round, like, hey, now you're like in the late stage of the game. Here's a super weapon for you. And it's basically treated like a power weapon there.
That just reminds me of like when I play that game, I'm just trying to run as far back from to cover from the enemy as possible just to get so I can pull out the sniper rifle and shoot that way.
Or you can do what I did and just do it point blank. You don't have to aim if it takes up the entire crosshair. But yeah, that weapon like single-handedly got me to go from being a Vanguard main in that series to being an infiltrator every time I play, because you can pull out the tactical cloak and go from a weapon that one hit kills almost everything on a headshot to a weapon that one hit kills everything except the last boss in one shot. It's just the exact archetype of what I want from a sniper rifle in the game. I look at the thing's head, I click the button, and they die.
Yep.
And since it's otherwise an RPG where the damage values have a little more give and take, and fights are a little, they're not quite as decisive as they would be in like a Call of Duty or something like that. It just makes that satisfaction of getting one hit kills all the more gratifying, and I used it in the ME3 multiplayer so much.
It's just funny too because enemies, like as you get further, they'll start having like biotic shields plus regular shields, but the bars just melt when you headshot that thing. It's just so satisfying to see it drop.
Yeah, especially in Mass Effect 3. Oh, I guess it was the same in 2, but it's like, oh no, they got biotic shields. My weapon's supposed to be bad against that.
Nope.
I will enable this guy's ability to give it the extra biotic tearing. And whoops, look at that. It's one hit kill again. Whoopsies.
I love a good sniper rifle. It's kind of hit or miss on the game, I feel like, if I'm actually going to be good at using it, but I love the option.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's definitely a shout out to all sniper rifles. I didn't have a specific one for my list, but that would have been the one. I forgot about it, but that's definitely my most used one that I can remember.
Exactly. It's the one I've put so much time into. And then in Mass Effect 3, they added the extra effect of most enemies, if you hit them in the weak spot, which was usually the head. The head blew up. So that was the extra little touch it needed for that one.
Were you ever a person that actually used sniper rifles like online games?
Widowmaker was my main in Overwatch 2. Not 2, just the original.
Yeah, but like any other games or just that?
I sucked at it in Halo, but I tried.
Yeah, same. Shout out the Gears of War sniper. We'll talk about Gears of War a little later, but that was like one of the only snipers in any game online I was actually good at. And that also had the exploding head thing, of course, because it's Gears of War.
And then Gears of War 3, you got the nice golf club execution with it.
Yep. So that will bring us to our ones. So before we get there, we will read the last of the write-ins, and then we can do some honorable mentions if you guys have any. I have a few, but
I have one.
I have two.
Okay, so the last of our listener write-ins, Sam wrote in with the yo-yo from Bayonetta 3.
Nice.
Which sounds really awesome. And then
it sounds like it has guns strapped to it, probably.
I would imagine something like that. Gremlin also wrote in with the heal guns from Bayonetta.
Those are definitely, yeah.
And then he wrote in with legions from Astral Chain.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, because they're kind of, it's funny. They're if you guys have ever watched JoJo, the anime, they're kind of like stands. Like you can control them separately, but yeah, they're really cool.
Gremlin also wrote in with one of the other things I was going to have on my honorable mentions, the flashlight from Alan Wake. I love that game. Looking forward to the second one. And then he also wrote in with the pulse rifle from Dead Space 2, which is a good, really cool choice. Which leads me to Poot, who wrote in about the plasma cutter from Dead Space, which definitely was on my honorable mention list.
Yeah, me too. That was one of my honorable mentions. Even though I don't like the game because it's too scary. I don't know. I played like 4 hours, but the plasma cutter is such a good gun.
Yes,
that's the one I was expecting to hear about.
Yeah, it's just one of the most amazing guns. I definitely was reminded that when I played the remake, in January when I played it. Just so versatile and just like cutting the limbs off is such an interesting mechanic. And then two other iconic guns I kind of thought would have been on our lists, but not mine. So I guess, I shouldn't be too surprised. But Brandon wrote in with the gravity gun from Half-Life 2 and the portal gun from Portal. Which,
they're very mainstays.
Yep. For a reason.
Almost a little too mainstay for me, but boy, when you get them, it sure is satisfying.
I didn't really think of the portal gun as a weapon, which is funny, but it technically is.
I mean, you kill at least one thing with it.
Yep.
Multiple if you're a bastard and you don't respect the turrets.
So before we get to our ones, you want to do your honorable mention, Straw? Then I'll go.
All right. Yeah, as we talked about, the plasma cutter was one, but my other one was from Red Faction, and it is the unicorn gun that farts rainbows.
Oh my gosh, that thing! I would have gone with the sledgehammer, but that works.
Because it's funny because the unicorn like screams as it farts the rainbow out too. So I only played one Red Faction game, and that's the one thing I remember about it. So there's that.
Oh Lordy.
I've never seen that one. I've played one Red Faction game, but I don't remember that being in it. But so my honorable mentions, I have 5 more. I had a really hard time narrowing it down to 10, so I just cheated and put a bunch in here.
Nice.
A couple people wrote in with my other honorable mentions, so those didn't count. So we're down to 5. I put the Spud gun from Bully. That's just one of my favorite games.
Classic.
The hammer from Smash Brothers, just iconic weapon.
Nice.
I could have put this in swords, but the shovel from Shovel Knight. Shantae's hair from Shantae. I just love that that is her weapon.
Yeah.
And then a really iconic weapon, the hidden blade from Assassin's Creed.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, that's a fun one.
Yep. Just visually really, really cool. Like, I just also love a good stealth weapon.
Yeah, especially in the original, I love that little detail of them having to chop off their fingers to make it work. It's just like that's such a assassin feeling weapon with just that little extra touch.
Yep, and all the animations of the stealth kills are just so cool.
In the classic Connor fashion, I think my honorable mention is actually one that I think is a completely useless weapon that I dislike. Just have to shout it out because I think it's that bad. The Gooper Blooper effect, or whatever it's called in Mario Kart.
Oh, yeah.
That is like, because it's like, oh yeah, I still have eyes. I could just, see around us.
I'm like, these tracks are so visually communicated that you can block off half the screen and I can still drive fine. So when I get hit by it, I do not care. And when I get it as my item pickup, I just go, great, this is going to do nothing for me.
Yep, because I don't even think it affects the AI either.
No.
Yeah, it's not going to touch the AI. So, yeah, that's always just been something that stuck out to me 30 years of just being useless. Don't know why that's what I thought of, but I did.
All right. Now with that nice useless item out of the way, we can move on to Straw's number 1.
All right, so my number 1, of course, I had to just put swords, but I do have one specifically, but I also wanted to shout out the Monado from Xenoblade, which Connor just actually played, so he's seen the greatness of that sword.
Fun weapon.
And I wanted to shout out I think it's Ragnell Ike's sword, which he has in Smash, and Fire Emblem, a 2-handed sword that he just uses one hand. But of course, one of the most iconic swords of all time, and even I can't argue against picking it because it is my number 1, and it's the Buster Sword. Obviously, Clouds from Final Fantasy VII. It's just such a cool sword. And I would argue maybe even Sephiroth's sword's even cooler because it's longer, but the Buster Sword is a good, thick sword, which is hard to beat. So that is my number 1.
It's something that once it's swinging at you, it's not going to stop.
Nope.
And I love all the discussion over the years online about like, how realistic is this sword? Are you going to destroy your arms trying to swing this? And then people also discovering, no, actually, it's like, it's not practical, but it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the animation he has for it are kind of close to the actual sort of movement you would need to swing a weapon like that effectively. So kind of hilarious attention to detail for such an otherwise absurd looking weapon.
Yeah, Sean also wrote in with the Buster Sword. Had to shout that out. I figured that someone was going to write this. Mm-hmm. And then he also wrote the Pyra from Xenoblade 2, which I assume, Straw Hat knows.
Yeah, that's so it's basically, it's not the Monado, but yeah, it's so in Xenoblade 2 you have blades, and that's like the main sword. The Aegis, I think it's called. So yeah, that's basically Rex's main sword, but it's a really cool looking sword too.
Sword which is also a woman?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe that's why I was confused when I was looking this up. I'm like, is this a woman or
if you play Xenoblade 2, it makes tons of sense. So it sounds like you both need to play it. So.
Okay. I mean, that concept sold me. So.
Also, I feel like we, have a nice discussion about swords. We also had to mention the Master Sword, the most famous of all the swords.
I've never used it.
Oh my god!
Actually, okay, I probably had it in Twilight Princess for like 2 hours.
Yes, very iconic sword.
Yep, probably other than the Buster Sword, the most iconic sword, I would say.
Yeah, most likely.
I feel like just
this... like me knows.
And we already talked about it, the energy sword from Halo. Love that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like a good sword is just, no matter what, just a good sword is always fun. Even if it's just the sword itself isn't cool, just something about playing with one in a video game is always fun.
There's a reason there's such a classic through all of human civilization.
And JRPGs, like that's like a trope, is by having a huge sword. I mean, Trails alone, there's so many characters with great swords. I couldn't even pick one because there're just so many great ones.
And if it's a sci-fi sword, or a nice, good high fantasy sword, you have to have that part where they're holding it in dual grip in front of them, and it gets extra long.
Yep.
That's not a metaphor for anything.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Are there any other famous swords we can shout out before we move on?
I don't think so. I mean, Fire Emblem, they all have the famous swords too, but there's so many that we'd be here forever, probably trying to think of all of them specifically.
Yeah, that would just like. There's a Sword of Mana. If we started going, I would just keep going. Soul Calibur. That's a great classic sword. Obviously, the blade from Transistor. Which doesn't quite look quite like a sword, but it works.
Yeah, we'll have to save that for our top 10 swords episode.
The rarest sword pick, that staff sword that Hawk uses in the trailer for Dragon Age 2, which then you never see again. I always wanted that.
I don't think I could beat that. So move on to my number 1. Gears of War, very famous franchise. Alex and Brandon wrote in saying the chainsaw rifle from Gears of War, which I feel like is a very, very appropriate pick. I feel like that is the most iconic weapon in Gears of War, but that is not what I picked. I picked the Gnasher shotgun from Gears of War 2.
Oh, yeah.
This is just, I think Gears of War 2, even at this point, is the game I played online the most. Because this was the game that we all had in high school. So it was like that perfect time where we had a lot of free time, not a lot of money to buy new games.
Yeah.
And so we just would get on Gears of War 2 like every single day after school, or on the weekends. We probably would play like 30-40 hours of this a week, I would guess. And this was, to me, this is just the best weapon in that game. Because you would, you'd shoot it, just shoot the ground with it. So then someone would come up to you, and then you would active reload, and then just if you could just aim right, which I got really good at, you just explode them in one shot. And there's nothing as satisfying in any multiplayer game ever, in my opinion, as that.
Yeah, it was. I didn't play a ton of Gears Online since Halo was more my go-to at that point when I finally was able to do online stuff. But I remember the Gnasher shotgun just being so reliable. It's just like, this is all tight quarters, and this thing does so much damage.
Yeah, because there were a lot of times where you would use other guns. Like I would usually keep the Lancer or the Sniper, like I was saying, for a bit of distance. But Gears of War always, at least in my experience, always just turned into people trying to get as close to each other. Like you're trying to flank each other and just get up close to them. And a lot of people would try to chainsaw you, but if you just had that shotgun like active reload ready, you're just going to explode them, and there's nothing they could do about it.
And most of the rule sets had the execution rules too. So you had like, if you down someone from across the field, it's like, great, now they're behind cover, I can't finish them off. So you might as well just get in there with a shotgun and blow them up in one go.
Yep. And you'd always do the thing where you would be stuck on the corner and you would zip to the side of the cover and then punch the person to stagger them and then just shoot them once and explode them. Yep. And that's just Gears of War in a nutshell. So that's why I had to put it as my one.
I was always particularly partial to the sawed off in 3.
See, I didn't play 3 as much. 2 was the one I played the most, for sure.
You literally had to touch them in order to get a kill with it. But if you were touching them and hit the button, that was just it. It
was over.
Red mist.
Since we're here, shout out quite a few other Gears weapons. The Torque Bow, I always love that thing.
Oh, that's a good one.
I forgot to mention in the bow section, that's probably my favorite bow. I was never good at it online. I did not even try, but in the campaign, really satisfying to shoot him with a dart, and then instead of getting the instant kill, you just wait a sec, boom, exploded. Yep. And that's always, super satisfying. And then the boom shot, also a fun weapon.
That was a funny one. I was very partial to the Boltok.
Oh, yeah, you know what? That checks out for you. That makes a lot of sense.
It was like, oh, great. Oddly enough, it was to me what the McCree's gun was to Straw Hat. It's like, great. This is a nice little sniper pistol.
Sniper pistol. Well, that definitely was the best one. And then, of course, I love the grenades. Stick them on people. Stick them on the ground as landmines. Just so cool.
That's a mechanic that should be used more.
It should. I reminisce about playing Gears of War 2 so much, so that's why I had to put it in my number 1.
Nice. My number 1 is, I'm starting to think, might be one of the oddest picks on here. It's certainly the largest. So where I grew up, it seemed like a lot of fathers taught their sons how to play baseball or some other normal sport outside. Well, my dad, when I was 4, taught me how to speedrun Dark Age into Feudal in sub 2 minutes and maximize my civilization's economic output in Age of Empires 2. I didn't do so hot at that part, but what I did do is once I finally got to the Castle Age and I had the trebuchets, I sure had a lot of fun building those and sending them off to go wipe out all the easy bots. That's just the most early childhood, so maximum nostalgia factor. Plus, just there's like nothing quite the same as seeing a row of these little packed weapons wheel off across a map, go to an active battlefield, go through this long setup animation. It's like, this thing is gonna, like, you put in some effort to get this thing even just ready to shoot, so it's gonna have to do some damage. And here's this big tall tower, and it a row of them flinging these flaming balls over at the castles that you're watching your units just tiny little chip away at it, and then these balls fall from heaven and just chunk the health bar, and then the sprites are just, just crumbles to pieces. It's just then you knew the game was just about to end.
So it's just like the whole buildup of getting to that point. It's
Yeah,
like
Age of Empires,
the signal that you've won when you could get these things off.
Age of Empires 2 was a game about seeing who can get trebuchets the fastest and send them at the other person. As far as I'm concerned, nice. So beautiful. Best weapon ever.
I have not played a lot of Age of Empires. I tried a little bit of it, but I've played games like this. But I could definitely see where this would be so satisfying. Like you're saying, you just get the unit that you've been building for, and then once you get it and you're able to actually use it, it's all over, and it just it's very satisfying.
Yep, and it's got that distinct thwop when it, or just like when it goes off. It's better than a catapult by a mile. Sending a 90 kilogram massive object up to 300 meters. Nothing else like it. It became like such a huge meme on Reddit at one point.
So would you say is Age of Empires one of your like earliest video game memories?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was playing that in my dad's lap when I was like 2 years old, usually just screwing up his games, but eventually like very quickly he tried to get it so I could play on my own. So, nice little pacifier babysitting tool.
Very nice.
It always seems like a game I actually feel like, as a mostly console gamer, obviously I've not played many games like that, but I have played some, and I just feel like Age of Empires would probably be something I actually would get into if I actually tried. Yeah. What would you say the best one is at this point?
Age of Empires 2.
Still is?
They keep re-release. I mean, after like 2010-ish, they started doing they did a remaster, which was all right, but then they did a full like re-release a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And it's got gorgeous they didn't fundamentally change anything about the game really, but they just gave it a bunch of quality of life and made it so you could still play it in the modern day with modern online systems backing it, so you don't have to do any rigmarole of the connections. And it's just like, great, I can keep playing the exact same real-time strategy game, the only real-time strategy game aside from one other one that I've been playing somewhat regularly since I was literally in diapers.
That's nice. And it was actually done well.
Yeah. It's just so good. It's so classic and eternal.
Have you played this at all, Straw Hat, or no?
No, I one of my friends is big into it, but I've never really tried them. I should at some point, but I've always been scared away because they're real-time strategy instead of turn-based, which is usually what I prefer.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve there. And it's such a known game that there's definitely a lot of you get some of that okay, I'm playing with old guard type people. Like any of the LAN parties I tend to have, well, not really LAN parties anymore, but my friends and family have every couple of years we have another 8-person session of the game, and then we go, oh, that's right, Connor's dad is ridiculously good at this game for some reason.
So you're really just battling for second place.
Yeah. Yep. You're just seeing who gets on the top before suddenly there's a swarm of elephants going across the map that came out of nowhere. And then you look at the end map and it's like, Pete's side of the map isn't completely deforested and he has turned it into a 100% war machine.
Yeah, I feel like the elephant maybe should have made this list from what it sounds like, but
yeah,
it's a second. It's a close second, okay, but good. The trebuchet is the real, that's it. That's where you're going for.
All right. Well, this was a really fun topic. I appreciate you coming up with the idea, Connor. We have a bunch of ideas in our document and we space them all out, and then for some reason it seems like every few months we're like, what should we do for this time? We have every other month the whole year planned out, but what should we do for this specific month? So this was I like these good open-ended topics, and also appreciate everybody writing in so we could read them off.
That was a lot of write-ins this time. It just further goes with the statement I had at the beginning of was everything in gaming eventually comes back to things hitting each other because, well, it is more or less a predominantly masculine
Yeah, most games involve some sort of weapon at some point.
Objection.
That could be a weapon. Like I said, the
Yeah.
dog barking in 102 Dalmatians is a weapon. So
the weapon of knowledge of law.
The weapons of your words.
Is a Tetris block a weapon? I mean, it makes other blocks disappear. I mean, who knows?
True.
Yeah. Oh, there's the Tetris multiplayer ones where you get your four row goes, and then that becomes a little, send some extra blocks over to the other side.
Yeah, there we go. Anything could be a weapon in a video game, it seems like.
Pretty much.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us in this episode. Thanks for listening. Next up, we have our month in review episode, correct?
It's either going to be that or a BioShock episode. I don't know what we're going to release first, but one of those two.
All right, so stay tuned for that. And then our top 10 for July, Connor will not be around, sadly. He will be busy all month. So Straw Hat and I are going to get together and do a top 10 Game Boy Advance list. So we're definitely going to be looking for write-ins for that.
Yeah, which I'd be useless for anyway, since I played like 3, and most of them were Pokemon.
Well, I mean, that does work, so.
Yeah. So yeah, we will be releasing those in the next month or so. So, please check them out. Thanks for listening to the show, and we'll see you next time.
Sayonara.
See ya.